This is the Fantasy Roadshow.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Roadshow with your boys here. My name is Truck, and I'm joined as always by the infamous Shane O'Mac. And today we are talking about running back dynasty rankings. But before we do that, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Podcast available on all platforms, and make sure you follow the Substack, thefantasyroadshow.substack.com. Shane, how you doing? Are you enjoying the craziness that is free agency?
This has been good. We're recording this on a Monday. I mean, like basically 12:01 till at night. We're recording at 6:54 Central Time. Has been just nonstop dings on my phone. Alerts.
Yeah, right around lunchtime today when I was at work, I was just going through. I'm like, oh my God, he's signed. Oh my God, he's here. Oh my God, he's here. So we're gonna have a quick convo about it. Mention some of the bigger names. Get our instant reactions on it. But we don't want to talk too much about free agency. We still have to talk about running backs here today. So, what signing was the most impactful to you? What stood out to you among all the signings? It could be a Dallas Cowboy signing like Javonte Williams, or it could be any one of the many moves that happened today.
I think I was surprised at a lot of moves. Like I did not see the DK Metcalf trade coming at least to the Steelers. I felt like the Patriots of all teams would try to get a Metcalf or a T. Higgins or somebody like that. My overall takeaway, though, is I don't think it's huge impact fantasy-wise for the most part. Like, I don't think DK Metcalf, that's like a great winning move to go to Pittsburgh on a non-throwing team.
We don't even know who the quarterback is.
Yeah, we don't know who the quarterback is. And the same thing with we got Sam Darnold going to Seattle, but, they lost receivers. So, I mean.
Here's my question. Is that an upgrade? Are we even calling that an upgrade?
Probably not.
Going from Geno to Darnold. Like, I know he had a great season last year, but, he kind of showed his true colors towards the end of the year. So, I don't know. I don't really consider – I think that's a lateral movement. Paid him a lot of money. Got over $100 million. So, yeah, I mean, the DK thing was crazy. I didn't expect that. I know Pittsburgh was hungry for another wide receiver. Now you got DK Metcalf and George Pickens in the same team. I saw a lot of fighting memes about those two because those two are very chippy and wear their heart on their sleeve. I know I heard George Pickens has given up his number 14. He's going back to his number 1 from college days. So that debate is already settled before it even began. I'm full in on the Bears offseason. Okay, that's the most impactful thing to me. So that's what I'll talk about. Getting Drew Dahlman right away this morning to lock in our center position. He was one of the hottest centers in the free agency market this year. That's huge. Obviously Joe Tooney and Jonah Jackson. Locking up that interior offensive line was such a big deal. And then grabbing a couple more pieces on the defensive line. As far as spending money in free agency goes, I'm fine with it all being in the trenches. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I want to spend the money. And I don't care if we have $0 left to spend on free agency. I'm glad we got the pieces we got. So I'm very pumped about the Bears offseason. And, of course, Bears win every offseason. So we're on track to keep doing that. But, that's what stood out to me the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably, like, fantasy perspective-wise, like, I'm kind of, Devontae Adams in the Rams is, better situation I think he was last year. So that's especially with Cooper Kupp moving out. So I was a wish for Tampa Bay. Like I would have liked to seen Chris Godwin move away just because I was, Jalen McMillan from a dynasty perspective. I think myself and a lot of people were thinking and counting on him being gone and McMillan stepping up and having a lot more value.
Yeah, I'm very happy that Godwin stayed in Tampa. It's just best case scenario for everybody in that situation in Tampa. Godwin was on a historical run to start the season, so I'm hoping he can build off that and come off that injury successfully. So, I mean, a lot of more crazy moves still to happen. I know we didn't mention them all. I don't think we have time to really talk about them all with everything that we have to talk about, but it's been fun. It's been a fun day, and this is just the beginning. I know free agency technically doesn't start till Wednesday, right? I mean, this is the legal tampering period, but it feels like this is the start of the new year. So I am thrilled, and we still have so much to talk about. But we are moving on to running backs. Okay, we're talking 2025 Dynasty running back rankings. The list you're looking at right now is not this year. That's last year. Okay, so we're going to dive in a little bit about what changed from last year onto this year. So disregard. I know some of you have already been peeping at the list, and you're like, how is this even accurate? Nope, we're down here. So this is our accurate list right now. We have to talk about the big debate: Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. Who's number one? Who's number two? Shane, you have Jahmyr Gibbs at 1. I have Bijan at 1. So why don't you state your case as to why you think Jahmyr Gibbs should be running back 1 over Bijan Robinson?
I think Gibbs is ascending. I think we're going to see a little bit less workload from David Montgomery, maybe a little bit more explosive capability. Jared Goff, I feel a little bit more secure with than the unknown of Michael Penix. But really, I'm splitting hairs here. I mean, it's 1A, 1B for me. People also forget about, I mean, he still, I think, had 15, 16 touchdowns, but Tyler Algier is still there, going to still get some work. So, I mean, it's a slight edge for me for Gibbs, just probably based on the uncertainty of quarterback.
Yeah, I have some dogs completely going at it outside the window, so apologies for the barking noises. But no, this is what we wanted to see from Bijan, right? His rookie year was lackluster. We talked about the potential of Bijan, almost 1,500 yards on the ground, 14 touchdowns. He did not have as many points per game as Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Jahmyr Gibbs had 18. Bijan had 16. But from what I saw last year with Bijan is the reason why I have him ahead of Gibbs is he was on the field a whole lot more. I should have done a deep dive on his snap percentage year 1 versus year 2. But Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, they share drives, right? One drive is the David Montgomery show, one drive is the Gibbs show, and that may change. It's a new offensive system or a new offensive mind in that offensive coordinator, probably running the same system with the 2 running backs. But even if it's a little bit more, it's like I just think Bijan sees the field more, and I want my running back on the field at all the time, right? Even in every goal line situation, I just feel like Bijan has more opportunities. But I'll have to vet that. I mean, you're talking about Bijan Robinson, 304 carries, Jahmyr Gibbs, 250. So 50 more carries. Still had a very similar output. Gibbs had 1,400 yards. You're right. It's very 1A, 1B, and I don't think the conversation necessarily matters too much because, if I have Bijan, I'm not going to trade him for Gibbs. And if I have Gibbs, I'm not going to trade him for Bijan.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean by that? Like it's one of those things like, hey, you got a great player on your hands. So, but for the sake of the rankings, I think I would rather have Bijan than Gibbs. To me, he's going to be on the field more. So
I would say also that if you're splitting hairs, the one thing you might consider also is I think Bijan plays in the easier division going forward. I think when they're talking about facing teams like the Saints, the Panthers, twice a year, that's maybe something to consider if you've got him pretty dead even also.
Yeah. Strength of schedule is a big deal too. So I'm just looking real quick to get a glance. Yeah. Snap percentage. Bijan has a much higher average snap percentage.
Yeah,
I don't have the direct number. I'm just looking at the numbers now. Bijan is consistently over 70% of snaps, and Gibbs is, on average, a little over 50. So
yeah.
All right, but anyway, Saquon Barkley, man, I think we hit the nail on the head last year with Saquon Barkley. Shane, you had him down at 7. I had him at 5. I think we were very high on him as a show, and we were going all in because of him joining the Eagles. I didn't think he was going to do what he did this year, right? He absolutely had an amazing season. He just got a contract extension with the Philadelphia Eagles. So for me, like, I know he's not on the young side, right? He's in the prime of his career now, but that doesn't last very long in the NFL with running backs, right? I am totally fine putting him in the top 3 for me because I know that he's going to have another 3 seasons with the best team, the best offensive line in football, and the Philadelphia Eagles. I am fine having him at 3, and I see you are feeling the same way.
Yeah, I think he's got 2 more years of high level. I think he's highly motivated. I think he'll still stay highly motivated with the contract. So great offense. Nothing's changed there really. So
Yeah, continuity, and he's elite. So I see we both have Devon Achane or Achane, whatever it is, in our 4 spot. You know, they got rid of every other piece that was in that offense in the backfield. So it seems like it's the Devon Achane show. And what he showed us this past year with his pass catching ability, his explosiveness, it's a lot of what we saw his rookie year, right?
yeah.
I am so on board with Devon Achane, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say more nice things about him. The guy is an absolute stud, and we have him in our top 5. So that's great to see. I don't know if you have any other comments about Devon Achane or want to glaze him up a little bit.
I just like the high ceiling, high explosive games you can get with him. He can give you those 25 plus games any week. And like you said, with a couple of running backs now gone from them, he should get a little bit more touches, which is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how good the Miami Dolphins are. But, I mean, even with Achane played a lot of games without Tua, right? He played with a lot of backups and a lot of adversity this year and still had the season he had. I mean, he was the number 9 running back on the season. So very intriguing. Only 203 carries. I think that goes up this year. Yeah, I would say around 250 is my guesstimation on that. 87 targets and 78 receptions. I think he led the NFL in receptions. He did. Led the NFL in reception, had 10 more than Alvin Kamara, who was number 2. So that's what you're going to get with Devon Achane. So give him another 50 carries, and I think he enters in the top 5 category on a yearly basis. So what the hell happened to Breece Hall? Do you have any explanation as to what's going on with Breece Hall? Finished as RB 18 this past year. I mean, the Jets were kind of another season where it's a dumpster fire. We saw that. But prior to last year, in another season where they were bad, he was still running back 7. He still hasn't had over 1,000 yards in a season. Most touchdowns he's ever had in a season is 5 on the ground. Is Breece Hall just one of those guys where we're going to say, man, he could have been really, really good?
Yeah, he just had, when I was looking here, because this is what, he had some just really bad low games. He had a week, early in the season, he had a 3-point game, a 6-point game. He's got a 9-point game, a 6-point game. I mean, he had some really bad lows, low.
8 different games he had under 10 points.
Yeah, that's rough. And kind of why I had him a little bit lower this year is, I made the rankings before the news today about Justin Fields signing with there. But I don't know. I'd have to do a little bit deeper dive as far as how does Justin Fields, what does his numbers look like as far as dump off passes to the running backs? That's something I'll need to look at and see. My first guess is there's not a lot, and maybe it's not as much as what Aaron Rodgers was doing, especially later in the season. So that would concern me.
Yeah, Fields is going to be a run first. Last year we had Breece at number 2.
Yeah.
Right. Breece was about as high as it gets after a running back 7 season. Follows it up with an RB 18. So I have him down at 5. I see you're a little bit lower at 8.
Yeah.
I am still clearly hopeful that he figures it out. I'm not ready to say that he is not a top 5 running back. I think he still has all the potential in the world, and I think he figures it out. But again, I don't have much to back me up on that because his fantasy output over the last couple of years has not been great.
And some of me ranking him lower also has to do with the next guy you got highlighted. I just think Bucky Irving, when you look at, let's just look at the team environment he's in, where continuity of the same coaching system, the same offensive system, the same quarterback, the same running back, same offensive line. So that's, the big thing. But then, I mean, his production, I think it was 5 or 6 top 10 finishes he had in his last 8 games. I mean, once they let him give the reins, I think the stat I saw was he was RB5 or RB6 after the week 12 bye. He showed he is a highly productive back. He caught ball. I mean, he could catch out of the backfield. I think he only dropped 5 or 6 balls the whole year. I just think probably now after what he did that we're going to see a wider split with him and White this year.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he kind of ran away with the job towards the back half of the season.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about after week 12. I mean, he's got 3 different games inside there in the top 5 and a couple more inside the top 10. He was just one of the really bright spots on the team that after they lost Godwin, they needed to make a push to get to the playoffs. And Bucky Irving was that guy. So, yeah, I mean, I wanted to put him higher. You have him at 5. I have him at 7. I'm still okay with where I have him. Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, I think deserve to be ahead of him right now currently. But we'll see, man. This could be another conversation where we're talking about Bucky Irving inside the top 3 next year.
Yeah, because look, as high as he finished last year,
RB 18, I believe.
RB 18, but I mean, when we talk about all those you just said, I think it was 3 or 4 top 5 finishes down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
He did all that, and he didn't have one receiving touchdown the whole year. So that's probably going to change this year. So I think you're looking at double-digit total touchdowns easily.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think you're right there.
Yeah.
I think you're right on that. I mean, 1,100 yards on 207 carries. That's pretty good on yards per attempt.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, moving on. I don't think there's too much to talk about a few of these guys down here, but I want to talk about Chase Brown, right? I got Chase Brown at 12. You have him at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Chase Brown, to me, I was really hopeful about him because obviously he went to college for Illinois, and he was someone that I was watching pretty closely. But Chase Brown just impressed me week in and week out this year on a team that really needed it, right? I mean, Chase Brown ended up as RB 15, had some really, really good games. I mean, from weeks 9 until week 17, you got running back 5, running back 9, running back 6, running back 4, running back 12. Like he was the guy, and he was absolutely dominating. 11 targets one game, 8 targets another game. The guy was scoring touchdowns left and right. I mean, just everything that you want in a running back. And now he's on a team with Joe Burrow, Jamar. Well, we'll see if Jamar Chase gets paid or not. Obviously, they're going to want to pay him. They just franchise tag T. Higgins. I mean, I want to put Chase Brown higher, but again, this is one of those guys where they got him cheap. Are they going to pay him when the time comes? The Bengals don't really pay players. They're struggling right now paying the wide receivers and the guys that they need to pay. So Chase Brown to me seems like he's going to be a really good player on fantasy rosters for a couple more years.
Yeah.
And then from then on, it's like, who knows, right?
I think Chase Brown, I think Chase Brown is the next Kyren Williams. I think there's we thought going into last year is like, it's going to be a 50-50 split with Zach Moss. And I think people are going to be a little bit leery this year, be like, well, they're probably going to draft somebody that's a lot better than Zach Moss, and he's not going to get much of the carries. I think we heard that same conversation with Kyren Williams a couple years back. And I think he's a similar build, similar explosibility, similar receiving out of the backfield. I think that we're probably looking at the next Kyren Williams as far as production in 2025.
I sure hope so. Yeah. I sure hope so. I'd like to see a full season where he's getting, what he was getting the second half of the season compared to the first half. It's night and day with his workload from when they had Zach Moss on there. So, ended up with 990 yards on 229 carries, 7 touchdowns. I think that number could be up in the 300 range for attempts on the ground, and around 1,200 yards.
Yep.
That's kind of what the expectations I'm putting on Chase Brown this next year. So, how about Christian McCaffrey? Okay, this guy has been a number 1 running back for years now. I think people are getting fatigued with the whole Christian McCaffrey thing. You draft him number 1 overall, and then he gets hurt multiple years. Last year we had him at 4. I had him at 4. You had him at 5. Just 1 year later, right after another injury season, he's all the way down at 13 and 15. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a world where Christian McCaffrey is a buy low?
Yes, There is. I think that the sample we need to look at is probably now they're not the same players, but you look at James Conner from last year. Like nobody wanted really to invest much of a pick into James Conner. Nobody probably wanted to buy him in Dynasty because they didn't trust the injury history. Everyone's going to have a similar narrative with Christian McCaffrey. I probably will for sure. But there could be that scenario where McCaffrey does a James Conner and plays most of the year. And if you're talking about him playing 15, 16 games, which is what I think Conner played last year, and he's going to smash,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be sending out trade offers for Christian McCaffrey. Okay. I'm just letting you know right now, you're in a fantasy league with me in a dynasty league. I will be going after Christian McCaffrey. I think he's a perfect buy low candidate. I think he's hungry, man. There's something like, I wanted to bring up, I did a little bit of research on, people talk about it often, the running back age cliff, right? When certain running backs get to a certain age point, they fall off a cliff. I remember years ago, it was like 27, 28. Any running back after 27, 28, you don't want them anymore. Trade them away in Dynasty. And I feel like now that number is shifting to like 30, 31. You have this draft class. I believe it was the 2016 draft class, 2017 with McCaffrey. The year prior was Derrick Henry. But, there's a graphic I had to pull up and talk about it. I'll put it on the screen right here because I have it saved. But basically showing that this class of running backs is just an anomaly, right? And they're pushing the envelope as to, hey, these guys can get it done at the age of 30 and later. Someone like Saquon Barkley, someone like Christian McCaffrey. I think these guys are going to be good. Like McCaffrey's 28. I don't think he's going to be slowing down at 29. I don't think he's going to slow down at 30, maybe at 31. I feel like that's kind of going to be the range. What's McCaffrey's he's under contract for another 3 seasons with the 49ers.
He'll turn 29 this year. Yep.
So give me that. You know what I mean? Like you're talking about in Dynasty, you want to, have an outlook of 3 years or so. If you got a running back like Christian McCaffrey, who's got another 3 years under contract with the team, whether or not he plays all 3 years, he's an absolute beast. And he does everything on the field. He doesn't leave the field. So that's my pitch for a buy low candidate in Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. Okay. Chuba Hubbard. You have him at 12. I have him at 16. What a diamond. Like, how would you describe Chuba Hubbard in an analogy? Like there's, you know what I mean? There's a perfect analogy for Chuba Hubbard where, you don't want to like him. He's not a great running back. He gets the job done. Like, how would you describe Chuba Hubbard?
Yeah, I mean I think he had to be one of the biggest fantasy surprises last year. I mean, as somebody who had him in a couple of leagues, I was like, oh, okay, I can wait 4 weeks and Jonathan Brooks is going to be back, and then it's going to be 50-50. And by the time the second half of the year comes around, Jonathan Brooks is going to take over that backfield. Now we're talking about Jonathan Brooks, maybe not even being available.
I'm not even convinced. I'm not even convinced Jonathan Brooks is a real player or a real person until I see him on the football field actually getting some work in. Like he had a lot of hype coming into the year. So I'm only kidding. I know he's a real person and a real player, but he's going to be out another season. Chuba Hubbard. I mean, he's under contract now. They just gave him an extension, didn't they?
Yep. They gave him an extension in the middle of the last year.
He's under contract for 4 more years with the Panthers.
Yeah.
He's 25 years old. Yeah. He's someone that, I mean, I'm not even convinced that when Jonathan Brooks is healthy, he can take the job from Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. And I think that team's going to be only better this year. I mean, I don't see them getting worse. Like we saw the maturation of Bryce Young in the second half of the season. That should carry over a second season of Dave Canales-led offense, which is a good thing as far as he'll feed the running back. So he's set up for another year of a good workload in a division that's not that great, like I talked about before.
Yeah, I mean, you got him at 12. I got him at 16. I feel like I'm too low on him personally with what he's shown. I mean, he finished RB12 on fantasy points per game. I mean, it's just hard for me to put him over Mixon and Henry. I have a certain special place in my heart for older running backs that you can get cheap. I have them historically ranked a little bit higher than certain people just because I have a little bit more faith that they can still get it done. I'm looking to build a championship now. I'm a win now kind of dynasty player. So give me those old veterans that still have about 1 or 2 years left in the tank. But Chuba Hubbard just impressed me through and through on each game I watched him. So what about Tyrone Tracy? We both got him at 19. He's someone that a rookie last year that we talked about a little bit. I know that Coles and I were drafting him quite a bit in underdog fantasy. And he was kind of always a late round guy for us, which, I mean, why we did so well in underdog and got so far. But I mean, what did you see with Tyrone? Why he's inside the top 20 now for Dynasty?
Yeah, and I think this could be somebody I'll say I will be most likely. Like once we get past the draft and we get those rookies, Tyrone Tracy is going to be moving down for me. Like spoiler alert, he's probably a sell high candidate right now for me and our sell highs. If you could do it before the draft, like here's my concern for him is like, okay, he was a day 3 draft pick, last year. Not huge production, like 1 rushing touchdown it was. I just think probably when you look at where he was drafted, where the Giants are drafting this year, I think the Giants probably are prime team that in that first half of that first part of the second round probably takes a running back there, whether it's one of the Ohio State guys or it's Caleb Johnson or somebody. I just see them investing probably a top 3 round draft choice in running back this year.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. I didn't really anticipate that. I never really know. I mean, the draft is still a little ways away, so we still got a lot more digging to do on that. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Giants didn't invest too much in Tracy, so they could go out and get another. This running back class is so deep.
So good.
I mean, I can't wait to talk about the running back rookies on a special episode and talk about Omari and Hampton, Caleb. You got Henderson, Judkins. There so many running backs, let alone Genty. I think teams are going to be revamping the running back room this year. So it's good to identify now. If you have Tracy, you're absolutely right. Sell high on him because I think, like my opinion of Tyrone Tracy is that he played really well. Stats don't show it. I mean, when you look at on his like finishing ending season stats, 192 rushes, 839 yards, 5 touchdowns. It's nothing special. Finished as the running back 26, running back 31 on a fantasy points per game basis. Like, it's not great. I mean, he didn't play every game as the starter. No. That happened kind of around week 5. Prior to that, he was only getting about 2 to 3 carries a game. But, I mean, when he took over, he looked good and he looked impressive. And I was gambling a lot on him as well. So won a few bucks there. But, I mean, it would before this conversation, if you were to sell me Tyrone Tracy, I would have paid market value for him in Dynasty. Put it that way. So. Yeah. All right, that's fair. I don't know if you want to talk about anyone else that I didn't highlight in this section. The only other guy I wanted to talk about a little bit was Zach Charbonnet. He's kind of that guy that he changed my opinion about him this season, which is why I have him a lot higher than you do. You have him at 32. I have him at 28. Charbonnet, when Kenneth Walker goes down and he's, season after season, he's missing games. Yeah. When Charbonnet comes in, he is a league winner. Like, he is a stud. He's scoring touchdowns. He's getting yards. He is that Tony Pollard of previous years, where if you had Zeke, you need Tony Pollard, or he's a very high drafted number 2 running back, because when he gets the opportunity, he does something with it. He plays really, really well. So I mean, that's my only case for Charbonnet. I want him on my team, break glass in case something happens type of guy there. But
he put up big numbers. I think if you're talking, you said the 3-year window, how many more years would they keep Kenneth Walker, I don't know. Like we saw them shed people this year. So could they get rid of Kenneth Walker after the 2025 season? I could see that.
Yeah, this is his last year under the rookie contract,
Yeah, I
24
could see
years
them
old.
not bringing him back. So I think if you're banking on that, then that and Charbonnet looks, I mean, this is a good time to get him for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Walker is going to command that much of a payday. You know what I mean? I don't think he's going to get a big bag. So maybe they're going to want to spend a little money on him, but I don't know. I have no idea. The way the direction this Seahawks team is going is just throwing me for a loop.
Yeah,
Right,
whole
bringing in
new.
Darnold,
Oh,
getting
man.
rid of DK, getting rid of Geno. It's just there's a lot of moving pieces going
Brand new
around.
offensive coordinator there. They fired the grub after 1 year. I mean,
That's what I mean. And so we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
Charbonnet is someone that I am fine investing in because I think he could have a bright future if something opens up
Yeah.
on the team. So, yeah. Other than that, anybody else you want to talk about in this range that you notice?
I don't think so. I'll be really keen on the Bears, what's going on in the draft.
Yeah.
If they take somebody or not, because Ben Johnson loves to utilize the running back. So if they don't draft anyone very high or somewhat high, then Swift's going to be interesting to see and watch.
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think he moves up. I think he can move down.
Yeah,
right? I mean, we have him right here at 25. Like last year, it wasn't great, right? Obviously for numerous reasons. But now you got a new offensive line, a new offensive coordinator. A lot of people in Chicago are talking about getting Genty at 10. Personally, I know that Genty had an amazing season. I know he should have won the Heisman, in my opinion. But this running back class is so deep.
Yeah,
I think this is a perfect opportunity to trade back out of the 10 spot and grab another running back later on in the draft. I think, as good as Genty is, I'd be fine with a Judkins. I'd be fine with a Henderson. I'd be fine with a Caleb. I'd be fine with a Omari and Hampton. You know what I mean? Like, we'll talk about it more. If they do draft Genty, cool. I'm fine with it. But I think you could, capitalize on that position and get some more value elsewhere, personally. All right, cool. Well, let's talk about a little bit about buy low, sell high, buy low, sell high options here. I know you already talked about a few of them. Chuba Hubbard mentioned, Tyrone Tracy you mentioned. What about Jaylen Warren on your buy low?
Yeah, I think maybe if you could still pull it off before Najee Harris gets signed, which he hasn't on Monday been signed yet, but all signs are pointing to he's not coming back. So Jaylen Warren was he was rendered like a second round tender. So it means the team would have to give up a second round pick if they wanted to match that deal. Nobody's going to do that.
Rendered a second round tender. I love how that.
Yeah, a little double entendre or whatever. But he in very limited touches last year. He had 6 top 25 finishes at the position. I don't think he's not going to come and start getting 20 carries or anything, but whoever they bring in as a second back, he's probably going to get a little bit more. He's going to start the year off probably getting more of the carries. The offense is, now that you've got DK and Pickens on both sides, that has to open up the run game in Pittsburgh for better run production, assuming they get somebody in there to play quarterback, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or somebody. But I just think Warren is probably a very cheap asset you could probably get a hold of right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, you talked about the what team were we just talking about to draft a running? Not the Seattle Seahawks. What team was
the Giants?
The Giants, right? You were talking about the Giants wanting to draft a running back. I think the Steelers are in a good spot to draft a running back as well. I mean, I have the free agents listed here, right? We got Najee Harris. He's not going back. We got J.K. Dobbins, who's played well off that injury, but I don't think that's someone that you invest in for the team. Nick Chubb, I don't see that happening. Kareem Hunt, no. Enrico Dowdle, no. I'm just, in my opinion, none of these guys fit in the Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. So bringing in a rookie running back on a day 2 or day 3, I think Jaylen Warren is still going to be that 50-50 split. And he did play well. I mean, not outstanding, but he was serviceable in running in fantasy lineups. He's like that guy that sometimes if you see him on the waiver wire, he can't be on the waiver wire, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to pick him up and play him when you have those pesky bye weeks, because Jaylen Warren gets it done.
Yeah.
From time to time, he will get you 10 points. That's all you need. My buy low is Ramondre Stevenson. The Patriots are moving on up, right? We talked about that. Mainly Ramondre Stevenson, if I could find him. Let's see where he's at. Stevenson, 4 more years under contract. He's 27 years old. So that brings him into age 31. I want him on my team during these next 4 years because I think the Patriots are going to be doing better, going to be improving year in and year out. And they've shown that they are fully on board with Ramondre Stevenson. What was his production? Let's see, 800 yards, 7 touchdowns. It's nothing crazy, but that team wasn't very good last year. And I think he's a perfect buy low candidate. I think he is the main guy there. He's going to get the job done. He's going to get the 20 carries a game. Hopefully he did that 3 games in a row, week 8, week 10, week 11, 18 carries 1 week. They're willing to give him the ball in those situations. And that type of workload I want with a running back. So I'm all in on Ramondre.
Yeah, I think also like he showed that he could. I was gonna look here, but he can catch the ball too. He was much more productive last year catching the ball. As far as I was just looking here, 41 targets, 33 catches. But here's what I on the pro side for Stevenson, like his team, his setup, his coaching, it cannot be any worse than it was last year. Vrabel is a major step up. Vrabel, it's hard to, yes, he had Derrick Henry, but he did kind of more lean on one back. I could see Stevenson kind of being a bell cow type of running back for them for sure.
Yeah, having him as a head coach is just going to bolster up that offensive line, just tough-nosed football that, what's that called? The energy that he's going to bring onto the team. So, yeah, I'm buying low on Stevenson.
Yeah.
We talked about Tracy, Alvin Kamara as a sell high. I have Joe Mixon. I feel like they're in similar situations here. I feel like they could be flip-flops. So tell me about Kamara, why you have him on a sell high.
Okay, I just think I think Alvin Kamara,
2 more years under contract. He's 29 years old.
To me, this is the year that he has his Austin Eckler year. Like he's defied odds, but I think this is the same age as when Austin Eckler he fell off the cliff. He's 30 this year. He hasn't hit double-digit touchdowns in a year. Like a lot of his explosive play metrics have diminished. I think as far as runs past 20 yards or more, 25 yards and more, they're just, the offense is not great. They're bringing back Derek Carr for what that's worth, but that's not that exciting. I think the only positive you would point towards is you hope that he doesn't hit that cliff like Eckler did. I'm banking that he does. And B, like Taysom Hill's not around this year. So some of those weird fluky scores that he got, maybe some of those go to Alvin Kamara, but I like to I want to get ahead of it. And I don't want to be the owner that then experiences the Austin Eckler cliff dive.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. He's been so fun to watch for years, year in and year out, but the cliff is coming, right? Yeah. And even with Mixon, right, he's got 2 years left on the contract this year, including 29 years old. I feel like Mixon's been in the league for 15 years. He's just been that guy. But I know I talked about it. My personal belief is I'm fine having these older running backs in a win now format, but for the general thinking of it, Mixon, to me, it's like he's going to have another good season. So you're selling him on the basis of his top 8 season he had last year, right? I think he was running back 9 on a points per game basis. So you're selling him as a top 10 running back for next season. I think you could still get a good amount worth out of him. And I'm afraid that maybe it's next offseason, maybe it's the year after that, but that value is going to plummet.
Yeah. And look at Mixon, like they've lost weapons. They're not going to have Diggs. They're not going to have Tank Dell. They traded today on Monday their best offensive lineman and Larry Tunsil. I just don't know. I'm kind of down on that team heading into this year.
I am too. And like, I know I talked about CJ Stroud as a bounce back candidate in our quarterback episode just one episode ago, but I am changing my tune on this team as the days progress because I'm worried. I really am. But Joe Mixon's going to be a bright spot. He's going to get the job done. He's probably going to have another top 10 season because he is very good, and they're going to be feeding him the ball. So sell him now while you can. All right.
Yep.
All right, Shane. I think that's about it. I think that about does it for running backs. So just top 36. We will dive further down the list. I think we do like top 70 or something as the season progresses. Yeah. Talk a little bit more about the nitty gritty details with the other guys. But overall, we just kind of wanted to hash out some of these conversations with you guys and, just enjoy talking football. So make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We have our wide receiver rankings coming up next. And we will continue to talk about all the free agency extravaganza that is going on in the NFL right now. It's a lot of fun. Shane, it's always fun talking to you and everybody else. Buckle up.
Buckle up, folks.